saith unto him, Sir, if thou hast borne him hence, tell me where thou hast laid him, and I will take him away. This kid's going to take them away, right? Jesus saith unto her, Mary. She turned herself and saith unto him, Rabboni, which is to say, Master. It's interesting. You get the impression that at first she didn't recognize him, but what apparently tipped her off was his voice. Tipped off, how interesting. We'll come back to this in a little bit. Jesus saith unto her, Touch me not. Actually, what he says, do not cling to me, is what the Greek. She apparently had a death grip on his ankles. Jesus said, Do not cling to me, for I am not yet ascended to my Father, but go to my brethren and say unto them, I ascend unto my Father and your Father, and to my God and your God. Mary Magdalene came and told the disciples that she had seen the Lord and that he had spoken these things unto her. Some people make a big mystical thing that she wasn't supposed to touch it. That's really not what it says. She was clinging around his ankles. So it could be just that simple, not to cling to him. Some people try to make more of it. I'll leave it at there, where it is. But now that takes care of the morning. A little confusing when you go through those passages yourself until you realize there were groups of the women and so forth catching up with each other. But Sunday afternoon is one of my favorite passages of that incredible day. Two of them, two disciples, went that same day to a village called Emmaus, which was from Jerusalem about 80 furlongs. Now, some of you may not play the horses. You may not realize it's about a 7-mile walk, okay? All right. And they talked together of all these things which had happened. It came to pass that while they communed together and reasoned, Jesus himself drew near and went with them. But their eyes were holden that they should not know him. I have no idea what verse 16 means. No, none at all. Whatever it means was taken away by the time you get to verse 31. But for some reason, yet unexplained, they didn't realize who he was. Now, if you want evidence that the Lord Jesus has a sense of humor, you just have to study this afternoon's episode, because I think it reveals a remarkable sense of humor. He says to them, get the picture here, these two guys are going, and this stranger joins with them, apparently. He said to them, What manner of communications are these that ye have one to another? And as you walk, you are sad. In other words, he recognizes that they're walking, they're really dragging. And he comes up as to say, how come you guys, why so blue, guys? What's up? And one of them, whose name was Cleophas, answering said unto him, Art thou only a stranger in Jerusalem? Hast thou not known these things which are come to pass there these days? Now this is the great line. Jesus looks him right in the eye and says, What things? Now, he's just been arrested a couple nights ago. Endured 6 trials through the night with the Jewish authorities, scourged, beaten, crucified, dead. He's been in the grave 3 days. And he can look them in the eye and say, What things? I mean, and they said to him, Concerning Jesus of Nazareth, which was a prophet, mighty in deed and word before God and all the people, and how the chief priests and our rulers delivered him to be condemned to death and have crucified him. But we trusted that it had been he which should have redeemed Israel. And beside all this, today is the 3rd day since these things were done. Yea, and certain women also of our company made us astonished, which were early at the sepulchre. And when they found not his body, they came saying that they had also seen a vision of angels, which said that he was alive. And certain of them which were with us went to the sepulchre and found it even as the women had said, but him they saw not. You can imagine them recounting this astonishing series of events with a lot of skepticism. Confusing, astonishing. There's no reason to believe they took the women seriously. And yet they're puzzled because the tomb was empty. They've got to be in bad shape. Then Jesus takes over. But even here, if you and I were writing the shooting script of the scene, we'd be tempted to say, boy, here's the big climax. Let's reveal who they're talking to. He doesn't do that. He does something that I think is fascinating. He speaks of himself in the third person as that other guy. Look what he says. He said unto them, O fools, slow of heart to believe all that the prophets have spoken. Ought not Christ to have suffered these things and to enter into his glory? He's not first person singular here. He's second person in the grammar. And then we have this fascinating verse, very important verse for every one of us. What did Jesus do? His first ministerial act after his resurrection was to lead a Bible study. A small group Bible study. And beginning at Moses and all the prophets, he expounded unto them in all the scriptures the things concerning himself. Beginning at Moses. He apparently didn't have the benefit of Graf-Wellhausen hypothesis that said Moses didn't really write the Torah, it was a bunch of other guys. Jesus didn't know that, you think. Beginning at Moses and all the prophets, he apparently went through with them all the prophets. How could he do that? Because they were well taught. They were well taught. There was a day in America where you could make references from Bible studies and people understand what you're talking about. Not today. Mention almost anybody in the Bible and they have no idea what you're talking about. Beginning at Moses and all the prophets, he expounded to them in all the scriptures the things concerning himself. And they drew nigh unto the village. This is after 7 miles of this, whither they went. And he made as though he would have gone further. He was just going to go ahead and continue. But they constrained him, saying, Abide with us, for it is toward evening, and the day is far spent. And he went in to tarry with them. In other words, they enjoyed this Bible study. They still don't have any idea who he is, but he's obviously pretty well-informed rabbi, going through the scriptures, highlighting all the way through. That they don't want to split. They want to have him stay. So they insist that he stay for dinner. But then something very strange happens. It came to pass, as he sat at meat with them, he took bread and blessed it and brake it and gave to them. You know, that's a breach of etiquette. He's the guest. That's the duty in any Jewish home of the host, the head of the house. But he just presumes. He takes the bread, blessed it, brake it, and gave it to them. And when he broke the bread, something interesting happened. Their eyes were opened that they knew him, and he vanished out of their sight. We will learn a few verses later, that night when they're all together, they're going to explain that they knew him in the breaking of the bread. What do you suppose it was about breaking the bread that caused them to recognize that this apparent stranger was the Lord? Anyone? The scars, the nail prints in his wrists, you betcha. Of course, the minute they realize who he is, he's gone. That's got to be an interesting evening. But listen to what they say to them. And they said one to another, Did not our heart burn within us while he talked with us by the way and while he opened to us the scriptures? That's the kind of heartburn we all want, isn't it? Can you imagine? We're going to come back to this in a little bit, but the evening, this is just the afternoon. Let's see what happens in the evening. They rose up that same hour and returned to Jerusalem. They walked back another 7 miles and found the 11 gathered together and them that were with them, saying, The Lord is risen indeed and hath appeared to Simon. Let me highlight that. That's not obvious. It appears here, and Paul makes reference to it in 1 Corinthians 15. But unrecorded in these, explicitly, is the Lord apparently, sometime, I assume, that afternoon, appeared to Simon Peter. We know he did because it says so, and it's referred to also by Paul in the epistles. But it's not detailed, if you will, in the narrative. And they told what things were done in the way and how he was known of them in the breaking of bread. So there again, what revealed his identity to them was the breaking bread, and I believe it's the nail prints in his wrists. And as they thus spake, Jesus himself stood in the midst of them and said unto them, Peace be unto you. Can you imagine? They're behind locked doors. They're frightened. They don't know what's going on. There's a lot of tumult. Doors are locked, so they're in a six-sided space, floor, ceiling, and four walls somehow, and locked. And right in the middle, they have a visitor. Peace be unto you. But they were terrified and affrighted and supposed they had seen a spirit. The fact that they were surprised or astonished, I can understand. But the fact that they're terrified, they're frightened, is a little surprising. Terrified and frightened that they supposed they had seen a spirit. And he said to them, Why are ye troubled? Why do thoughts arise in your hearts? See, even Jesus' own words confirms the fact that their reaction to his presence is sort of surprising. They're really troubled by this. To be shocked, of course. But to be frightened is something else. And why do thoughts arise in your hearts? Behold, my hands and my feet, that it is I myself. Handle me and see. For a spirit hath not flesh and bones, as ye see me have. So understand, this isn't a vision. This isn't some kind of apparition. Clearly, the text indicates, and Jesus wants us to understand, that he is very physical. And I'm going to suggest to you, as we'll try to explain before or through tonight, that he is probably more physical than either you or I. We'll come back to that as we go. But he is tangible. He's palpable. Behold my hands and my feet. Handle me and see. And when he had thus spoken, he showed them his hands and his feet. And while they yet believed not for joy and wondered, he said to them, Have ye here any meat? Hey guys, got anything to eat? My kind of guy. He never appears, it seems, without eating. They gave him a piece of broiled fish and of a honeycomb. And he took it, and he did eat before them. Again, did he need to eat, or did he just enjoy eating, or was he doing it just for the fellowship that goes with that? Maybe all of the above. But then we have a strange fulfillment of prophecy that many people miss. But Thomas, one of the 12, called Didymus, was not with them when Jesus came. As presumably now this next day. The other disciples therefore said unto him, We've seen the Lord. But he said unto them, Except I shall see in his hands the print of the nails, and put my finger into the print of the nails, and thrust my hand into his side, I will not believe. This is probably the next day. That Monday morning, maybe they all got together. Hey, Thomas, boy, you should have been with us last night. Guess who showed up? Yeah. I'll believe it when I can handle it and see, right? Thomas was from Missouri, I guess, as we say. Well, after 8 days again, his disciples were within, and Thomas with them. Then came Jesus, the doors being shut, and stood in the midst and said, Peace be unto you. In other words, a repeat performance here, 8 days later. Then saith he to Thomas, Reach hither thy finger, and behold my hands. Reach hither thy hand, and thrust into my side, and be not faithless, but believing. Can you imagine how distressing that must have been for Thomas? To realize that Jesus heard every word. When he was mouthing off 8 days ago, Jesus heard it. That's a sobering thing. I remember a little grandson asked Grandpa, Can Jesus see me all the time? And very shrewdly the grandpa answered, Jesus loves you so much he can't take his eyes off you. I like that. Thomas's response, and I somehow visualize, I've checked the text, I can't find out where I got this impression, but somehow I see Thomas falling on his knees. And Thomas answered and said to him, My Lord and my God. Now there's a verse in Zechariah 13, verse 6. I can remember when I first came across this, I was a teenager, and in those days I was collecting cards. I used to, when I found a verse that I wanted to memorize, I'd put the verse on one side and the reference on the other, like the navigators do and so on. And I came across this one. One shall say unto him, what are these wounds in thy hands? And then she'll